Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. The mind is a tool of observation. Period. Okay. The Samsaric mind is a tool of thingifying, permanentizing, ownership, possession, and being possessed by the manifestations of the physical universe. What's the difference? Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you for being here. Welcome to this magnificent life, your wondrous life. We are Buddhists, and we want to mentally observe and experience. Observing is one thing, but applying that observation to this physical being is an experience of the majestic, incredible, unfathomable complexity of life. So when the Lankavatara is translated as saying mind only or mind itself, it's an attempt in words to locate our focus of attention on that process of observation that exists within the emergent property of mind, the emergent mind. Emergent from what? Emergent from life, the whole process, the entirety of the physical universe, as represented in this local manifestation of uncountable energies. Our karmic freight train, engine, if you will, our karmic engine, better analogy. Just stop saying freight train. It's our karmic engine of manifestation, moment-to-moment manifestation. But that engine is not unique. The unfathomable, uncountable, immeasurable energies amalgamating into a perception of self, a point of view, as immense as it is still just a tiny fraction of the entirety of the potential that is the universe. We are an instantiation of a certain captured set. And we procreate and create more sets. But all of those minds, samsaric minds captured by identification also have a quality that is universal, and that is to witness, to observe the entirety of the process itself. That exceeds, breaks through, transcends, expands. That perception doesn't respond to the borders of the definition of self-identification. Instead, that observation, that witness mind, perceives with the parameters of the entirety of the universe. And that includes time and space. This is why Buddhahood is timeless. This is why things are established, functions of observation are established throughout beginningless time. This is that time shelf, if you will, that precipitous moment when identification reaches its edge in this physical parameterized identification, and like a zoom lens completely backs off to the widest possible angle, a 360-degree angle, not possible in photography, but, right? You could look at our lives as a, 1 million millimeter zoom, and our Buddha-ness as completely wide field. Make sense? So I say all of that to prepare you, because we're going to hear a lot about mind only, and I want you to understand what that means, or mind. What's the other use here? Mind, not just mind only, but mind itself. Itself. See the problem of language? To say the mind is an it is to discriminate it from mind, no mind. That's not quite Buddhahood. Talks about Buddhahood, and I will ascribe that to the limitation of an alaya consciousness, which is the ground on which all of this, right, emergent mind observer is emergent from. So I get it, yes. But the point is that the mind, unlike a finger or a liver, or wrong side of the liver, or whatever, can't transcend the physical. But the mind can. The mind can see a much greater field of vision. So here we go with part 26. Further, Mahamati, the Bodhisattva, who are thoroughly acquainted with the nature of Citta, Manas, and Manovijnana, of the 5 Dharmas, of the 3 Svabhavas, and the twofold egolessness, will assume various personalities for the sake of benefiting others. Just like the imagination that evolves from the seat of the relativity knowledge, and again, like the mysterious gem that reflects varieties of colors. Going over to all the Buddha lands and assemblages, the Bodhisattvas will listen to the Buddhas discourse on the nature of all things, which are like a vision, a dream, an illusion, a reflection, and the lunar vision in the water, and which have nothing to do with the birth, death, eternality, and extinction. The Bodhisattvas thus facing the Tathagatas will listen to their discourses on the truth that does not belong to the Shravaka and the Pratyeka Buddha vehicle. They will then attain 100,000 samadhis, indeed 100,000 nayutas of kotis of samadhi. And by means of these samadhis, insights, think of it that way, they will go around from one country to another. They will do homage to the Buddhas, be born in all the celestial mansions where they will discourse on the triple treasure, right, the three bodies, manifesting Buddha bodies, there it is, and surrounded by Shravakas and Bodhisattvas, they will, in order to free them from the alternatives of being and non-being, instruct them to understand thoroughly what is meant by an objective world, the world of an observer, which is nothing but mind itself, and in which there are no realities. At that time, it's an odd turn of phrase there are no realities. I question the translation. At that time, the emancipated one recited this verse. When those who are born of the Buddha see that the world is no more than mind itself, they will obtain a body of transformation which has nothing to do with effect-producing works, but which is endowed with the powers, psychic faculties, and self-control. So, what is all that? Do some of you realize or recognize that that's just another bunch of words to say something we've repeated many, many times over and over again? Or do you see something different in this? I think it's easy in this translation and in these words and in this sutra to fall prey to the idea of selfness, identity, even though so much of this language is trying to demonstrate that selfness is an illusion, that it's not real, that it's conjured of the mind. But then to say something like the mind itself kind of muddies it, because it assumes the mind is a thing. And it isn't. It's a faculty. And he says so. Psychic faculties and self-control. So the realization of the Bodhisattva here is described as, first of all, starting out as understanding the nature of mind, how the mind works, how the samsaric mind identifies and therefore holds on to everything. And the fallacy of that. Understanding the way the Sita creates things, and the manas and manovijnana create dramas around those things, right? Put them in order, this before that before that. The five dharmas, the three svabhavas, we've gone through all of these things, the natures of being and so forth. We develop them further in the Lotus Sutra, as you know, the 10 factors, right? And the worlds. The twofold egolessness, we just got through talking about that, which specifies the egolessness of the mind, has no ego. It's a facility. It's a lens. Of course, a lens is a thing, but a cognitive lens? How can we talk about that? What the mind actually is or functioning as. Everything's a relationship of mind to the physical universe. It's a portal. It's like the pupil. You point to the pupil in the eye all the time, and we call it a pupil, and we identify that black circle in the middle of the eye. But all the while, we staunchly forget that it's just a hole. We're giving characteristics and labels to a hole. It's a hole where the light gets in. So it has no color. It's not a black circle in the middle of the iris. It's a hole in the middle of the iris. The mind is like this. The mind is not a thing. It's a portal of the process. And then once that portal is open, we have all this physical stuff to attach to identify with. But what if you didn't? What if you saw all this stuff and understood it to be a moment-to-moment manifestation, just like you are? That there's nothing there, that it's happening there. Right? This is what this language is trying to point to. Don't think of the mind as a thing. Think of it as a perceptive portal for you to imbue your experience of time-space with an alternative knowledge, an alternative filter of interaction. What's your relationship with each moment? So then life becomes about relationship, and that relationship imbued with prajna, noble wisdom, as it's called here, that all of it is just in process. No need to hang on to, no need to reach for, no need to hold on. Just be with it. Be in the flow, if you will. If you're in that position mentally, then self-control is easy. It's not an effort. You don't have to control yourself because there's nothing to control. There is just this experience of life. Yes? Put the bookmark down. At that time again, Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, made a request of the emancipated one. Tell me how all things are empty, unborn, non-dual, and have no self-nature, so that I and other Bodhisattva Mahasattvas might be awakened in the teaching of emptiness, no birth, non-duality, and the absence of self-nature, and quitting the discrimination of being and non-being. Quickly realize the highest enlightenment. Okay, so at this point, it must have occurred to you, it certainly did to me, Mahamati is finding different ways of asking the same question that Shakyamuni has already answered several times. So is Mahamati stupid? I mean, he is a Bodhisattva Mahasattva. That title identifies him as a superior Bodhisattva, somebody who's well-trained, well-read. How could he be answering these asking these very fundamental questions that take you all the way back to the Four Noble Truths? How is it that you require instruction? Or is Mahamati simply being the voice, as he was set up to be early in the Lankavatara, for all of these other bodhisattvas? That makes more sense. Still, it's a bit annoying that Shakyamuni is being forced to answer the same question over and over again. Isn't it the nature, and we see this with children, that when a question is answered, the answer carries with it data outside the prior knowledge of the questioner? And the moment there's new data, new information, the questioner just finds new clever ways to question that information and roll it into the same information or question that they previously had. Oh, the sky is blue because. Well, why? Remember the endless why? So this is a form of that. Right? The emancipated one, Shakyamuni, answers with an elaborate answer somewhat repetitive, but new information. And as soon as there's new information, right back at you, Mahamati comes with that's the same verbiage and asks you to explain it. Like, you haven't answered my question yet. You just supplied more froth around it. So let's examine the froth. It gets a bit tiresome. But it also may be useful for reaching people. As I've said before, we all experience the world differently. So perhaps the insights, the samadhis of some are not piqued by a particular answer, and answering again a different way might succeed in reaching those people. Which is a reference that Shakyamuni makes in this answer previously of assuming various personalities for the sake of benefiting others. This is very much a core aspect of the teachings. Expedient means. Trying to bring the concepts and insights of Buddha-ness or coursing in Bodhisattva to as many different minds, conceptions, capacities, levels of practice as possible. And so here it is, it's happening in its form right now in the Lankavatara. Have you ever noticed that sometimes when you're around different people, or especially people you haven't been around before, but even those that you know very well, you're kind of a different person? Right? We all observe that. At one point or another, we go, it's funny, I go or I meet that person, and I remember when I was younger, I would start mimicking accents. It wasn't something I was doing purposefully, but I would notice that I would just do that. It's an innate faculty that we have. And what Shakyamuni is identifying here is that faculty in service, because we're practitioners of Shakyamuni's Buddhism, and enlightening our mind, even though we're unaware with our samsaric mind that our Buddha mind is at work all the time. When we enliven it, when we work on developing it, then our adaptive behavior to the people we're around is informed by that Buddha mind, that wider aperture, that Buddha wisdom. Then Shakyamuni responds, Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, now, Mahamati, listen well and reflect well upon what I tell you. So, Shakyamuni is saying, you're making me repeat myself, so now pay attention. Replied Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, I will indeed. Emancipated one. The emancipated one said, emptiness. Emptiness indeed. Mahamati, it is a term whose self-nature is false imagination. And that's something we've discussed in hundreds of videos, isn't it? What is emptiness? Is it that this is empty? Or is it that our imagination of it as a permanent thing with all of these characteristics is something that can be owned and maintained permanently? We call them permanent markers, right? But when we analyze more deeply, we understand that that's a false discrimination. It may be useful for our temporary instantiation of being in the physical samsaric world. But the truth of it is that it's arisen, it abides for a time, and then it ceases. This will not exist in the future. So understanding, perceiving that way alters our experience of this. Isn't this a useful tool right now? Maybe it's not, because I may try to do something with it and it's dried up. It's already decayed to the point where it ceases to be useful. So it turns out it's not permanent. Operating from that knowledge is kind of freeing, because I can use it while it's here. If it's not here, I don't need it, or something else will replace it. Be malleable. Understand that things are in constant change. Because of one's attachment to false imagination, Mahamati, we have to talk of emptiness. No birth, non-duality, and absence of self-nature. In short, then, Mahamati, there are 7 kinds of emptiness. The emptiness of individual marks, characteristics. The emptiness of self-nature, it doesn't produce itself. There's no molecule called highlighter. The emptiness of no work. The emptiness of work. The emptiness of all things in the sense that they are unpredictable. Unpredictable. That's a typo. The emptiness of its highest sense of ultimate reality, realizable only by noble wisdom, only once we see it as the process that it is, encapsulated in whatever forms, to be of use for a time, then we begin to understand what it is. And the emptiness of mutuality, which is the 7th. So the very fact that we discriminate the pen is a temporary thing. That's mind, not this. It's not about this being empty and temporary. It's about our perception of it permanentizes it, and we need to adjust that so we understand that it's just a temporary manifestation. Mahamati, what then is the emptiness of individual marks? It's yellow. It is that all things have no such distinguishing marks of individuality and generality. They're created perceptions. For instance, the yellow that I see is not the same yellow that you see. The quality of light, the quality of material, the quality of my eye. It's all just suchnesses. It's not a permanent, identifiable atom, thing. It's a fluid perception. Yes, it has a suchness of yellow, a color suchness that seems to reflect a light band of yellow in this full light spectrum. In a different light spectrum, it may look green. We see that with black lights, don't we? When we use black lights on things, the colors change. Fluorescence, yeah? In consideration of mutuality and accumulation, things are thought to be realities, or we make them real, right? But when they are further investigated and analyzed, Mahamati, they are non-existent and not predicable. Wow. That's a second time. That word must be, with individuality and generality. And because thus no such ideas as self, other, or both hold good, Mahamati, the individual marks no longer obtain. So it is said that all things are empty as to their self marks. Marks are something imposed on things. They don't, in themselves, express those marks. Those marks are perceptions of, not created by. Again, Mahamati, what is meant by the emptiness of self-nature? Mahamati, it is that all things in their self-nature are unborn. Hence the emptiness of self-nature, and it is therefore said that things are empty in their self-nature. Little word game, word salad again. But simply means that things exist in moments. They're manifestations of potentials, but they don't in and of themselves independently exist. There's no planet of highlighters. They don't populate by themselves. They don't have a self-nature. Again, Mahamati, what is meant by the emptiness of no work? It is that the skandhas are nirvana itself and that there is no work doing them from the beginning. The universe didn't start from a lab with all of these ingredients in it and then they got reproduced. That's the way we generally look at things, if you think about it. If you intellectualize and understand that everything in the universe is energy in certain forms, instantiating moment to moment, then it would be a convenient aberration to say that things are created, exist in and of themselves, and pop up moment to moment like they're pre-existing tendencies and conditions. But they're not. They're just perceptions from the alaya consciousness. I'm not saying they're not real. I'm saying that identifying them confuses our experience of everything. Therefore, one speaks of the emptiness of no work. Again, Mahamati, what is meant by the emptiness of work? It is that the skandhas are devoid of an ego and its belongings and go on functioning when there is a mutual conjunction of cause and action. Thus one speaks of the emptiness of work. Things come about because we apply a will toward, right, a action, and that action uses the tendencies and conditions of other energies to manifest something that can continuously manifest for a time, like a pen, right? What are the tendencies and conditions that were used to create this pen? Plastic, liquid ink, foam to hold the ink inside, so on and so forth. And so with volition, with a mission, a cause, a program of actions, we were able to extrude this plastic, so on and so forth. It didn't just pop up under the ground like bodhisattvas, yeah? We didn't mine highlighters. Again, Mahamati, what is meant by the emptiness of all things in the sense that they are unpredictable? There's a T missing in that word, and I think it's going to be throughout the whole book. It is that the nature of the false imagination is not expressible. Hence, the emptiness of all things in the sense of their predictability. Thus, one speaks of the emptiness of unpredictability. Again, Mahamati, what is meant by the emptiness in its highest sense of ultimate reality, realizable by noble wisdom. It is that in the attainment of an inner realization by means of noble wisdom, there is no trace of habit energy generated by all the erroneous conceptions of the beginningless past. Again, everything is an instant. Everything is a manifestation of potential through time-space. And if you go look at all of it, it's as empty as no time-space. Thus one speaks of the highest emptiness of ultimate reality realizable by noble wisdom. That noble wisdom being the very observation of the mind of Buddhahood. The wide field, unattached, universe mind vision is the highest emptiness of ultimate reality realizable by the noble wisdom. Again, Mahamati, what is meant by the emptiness of mutual non-existence? It is this. When a thing is missing here, one speaks of its being empty there. For instance, Mahamati, in the lecture hall of the Mrigrama, wow, there are no elephants, no bulls, no sheep, but as to the bhikshus, I can say that the hall is not devoid of them. It is empty only as far as they, the animals, are concerned. Further, Mahamati, it is not that the lecture hall is devoid of its own characteristics, nor that the bhikshu is devoid of this bhikshuhood, nor that in some other places, too, elephants, bulls, and sheep are not to be found. Mahamati, here one sees all things in their aspect of individuality and generality. But from the point of view of mutuality, some things do not exist somewhere. Thus one speaks of the emptiness of mutual non-existence. So the idea that things appear moment to moment with the characteristics we experience them in this place, this time, this, right, does not immediately presuppose that they do not exist elsewhere. We're just having that moment's experience with it now here where our mind is perceiving it. But that doesn't negate that they don't exist anywhere else. This is the problem of distinguishing and discriminations. That is that, not that. This, that, there. This glass is half empty, half full. Stop saying that. The glass is a vessel for purposes of this samsaric universe, and it's a container, and it's always full. But the idea of a container that's half full or half empty, that's completely created by mind. It is not a state of thing. They're characteristics imposed upon that thing. Whether we agree upon those characteristics or not. These Mahamati are the 7 kinds of emptiness of which mutuality ranks the lowest of all and is to be put away by you. Again, Mahamati, not that things are not born, but that they are not born of themselves. Except when seen in the state of samadhi, this is what is meant by all things are unborn. Stop confusing the physical world with the mental world. You can perceive with the mind, the tool of witnessing, a much grander process outside of the samsaric processes of physicality. You can actually see pre-physicality what all physicality derives from potential. But what does potential look like? What does it smell like? How do you hold potential? We all know what potential is, but we can't identify it. That's the point. That all things are devoid of self-nature means that there is a constant and uninterrupted becoming, a momentary change from one state of existence to another, moment to moment to moment to moment. Seeing this, Mahamati, all things are destitute of self-nature, so one speaks of all things having no self-nature. Again, Mahamati, what is meant by non-duality? It means that light and shade, long and short, black and white are relative terms. Mahamati, and not interdependent of each other. As nirvana and samsara are, all things are not two. Samsara nirvana except where are not two. There is no nirvana except where is samsara. Right, nirvana being a word that describes an emancipation from. So how can you have an emancipation from if there's no thing to be from? Oh yeah, that's samsara. And there is no samsara except where there is nirvana. Because the two aren't mutually exclusive. They're simply different experiences of the same thing. Remember the Vimalakirti? There is no separate Buddha land. The Buddha land is this land, re-experienced. It's the same land. The only change is in the mind, the perceiver, you. For the conditions of existence is not of mutually exclusive character. Therefore, it is said that all things are non-dual, as are nirvana and samsara. For this reason, Mahamati, you should discipline yourself in the realization of emptiness, no birth, non-duality, and no self-nature. You should really get to meditate on those ideas so that you get what they're actually indicating, the nature of mind, yeah? Then at that time, the emancipated one recited this couplet of verses. I always preach emptiness, which is beyond eternalism and nihilism. Samsara is like a dream and a vision, and karma vanishes not. Well, of course, he would say that in the scope of the 8 consciousnesses, right? Because that's what the alaya consciousness is, karma. Right? Space, nirvana, and the 2 forms of cessation, thus, the ignorant discriminate the things which are not effect-producing, but the wise stand above being and non-being. This separation, this paradigm shift of mind is constantly being indicated, yeah? At that time, the emancipated one said this to Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva. This teaching of emptiness, no birth, non-duality, and no self-nature is found in all the sutras of all the Buddhas. Yes, indeed. And this doctrine is recognized in every one of them. However, Mahamati, the sutras are the teaching in conformity with the disposition of all beings and deviate from the real sense and not the truth preserving statement. Mahamati is like unto the mirage which entices the deer, which is treacherous with its treacherous springs. The springs are not there, but the deer are attached, imagining them to be real. So with the teachings disclosed in all the sutras, they are for all beings for the gratification of their own discriminating minds. They are not the truth-preserving statements meant for noble wisdom to grasp. For this reason, Mahamati, be in conformity with the sense and be not engrossed in the word teaching. Wham! I think I'm going to drop it there for today. Well, we're getting to a major point of the Lankavatara here, which I've extolled many times before outside of the Lankavatara. And that is this obsession. You can see that Shakyamuni's getting a little fed up here. He's saying, look, stop being completely distracted and engrossed in the words and just stand back a moment. Try to understand what's being meant here, what's being taught here. Integrate this knowledge into your awareness, your experience, instead of simply memorizing words and trying to put them in different order and seeing if you get a different shade of chocolate pie. Try to see the concept at work here. Try to expand your mind beyond simple rhetoric, mimetics, right? This is how you'll get to the deeper wisdom of the process that we're discussing here. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you for being here this long. Thank you for listening, watching. Don't forget, you can download all of these as audio podcast at the Buddhahood Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for your practice. Thank you. Please like and subscribe. It helps grow our Sangha, right? And to those of you who are able, in any way, form possible, small or large, or continuous or brief, your donations are essential for us to continue this channel, these podcasts. All the links are on the video, Patreon and PayPal. And of course, don't forget the bookstore. Many of you have discovered the bookstore. I'm seeing some activity there, and that's very much appreciated. That helps support the channel a lot. And of course, get yourself a mandala. Threefoldlotus.com, lots of free info there, and I will see you in the next one. Really, really proud of you guys. Kind of awed, actually. And thank you for helping my own practice, yeah? Take care of yourselves. Be kind to yourself and others. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.